Lady on the Phone. This one's a request, and I have to say I was not planning on doing this one until I got really to the end of the Nik catalog. It's just never a song that was on my radar, but I learned it, and man, listen, it has taken so much work to figure this one out. It's like a Steely Dan song on steroids. So it's going to be a long video. You may need to watch it a couple of times to figure out what's going on here. There's going to be a lot of weird chords, and yeah, so we'll just get through it. There's a chord chart below. That took a long time to do as well, with all the chord voicings matched up with the lyrics, everything that you'll need to hopefully figure this one out. So with that preamble, let's take a listen. All right, so we're in D flat major here, and we begin on the 4 chord. No, sorry, we begin on the minor 2 chord, an E flat minor. Now the recording, you can hear it's played a lot lower, so you'd have to tune your E string down to D or E flat, and to get that same bass pitch. So you can just play an E flat minor chord here. All right, and then the second chord is a difficult one. It's a G flat add 9. Now you can just play this as a G flat. All right. Now we're calling this G flat because we're in D flat major here, so it's enharmonic with F sharp major, but in D flat this would be considered a G flat chord. So you can add the 9 here, which is a stretch. It's hard to get. I mean, add 9 chords up here, it's a lot easier, but add 9 chords down here is pretty tough. All right, so the add 9 is just a bar chord, which you add that 9th, which is the A flat, right on top there. Okay. Now you could be thinking, well, couldn't I do an add 9 with the 9th down here? You could, doesn't sound good though. Another way you could do it is you could come way down here. That's a hard chord to make, but that sounds terrible. So this is the voicing that's used on the record. And then on top of that, there is a F sharp. Here I go, calling it an F sharp, a G flat power chord right there. Let's listen to that. There's our E flat. Oh, there's our E flat minor. Jesus Christ! Here, listen. Right there. There's your G flat power chord. All right. And so then that G flat, that's our 4 chord. Okay. And then we go to the 5 chord, which is our A flat up to a B flat minor. A flat major to B flat minor. And B flat minor is our 6 chord, right? Our minor 6. So A flat to B flat minor, A flat to D flat, and then down to our G flat, and then I think it ends on the G flat there. Later in the song it goes up to E flat, but it ends on the G flat. So let's listen to that one more time. And by the way, so for the rest of the song, you'll see me when I play this G flat. I might play the 9th. Oh, there, Jesus Christ. I might play the 9th. I might just be lazy and play it as an as a G flat chord. So let's just play that whole intro again. All right, now we go to the A flat. All right. So look, as I told you, it's going to be a long video. All right, this is a very, very, very complicated. It's not complicated. It's just a shitload of chords and a bunch of key changes. Okay, so now we go to the verse, and we're going to change keys to A, and then we're going to change keys to C, and then we're going to have a really wacky part that's got chords all over the place. So let's go ahead and get going with this verse here. All right, right here. Okay, so we change key from D flat to A major here. So the first thing we have then is out of the G flat, add 9 at the end of the intro, we come to an A sus2, right? Now on the record it sounds like there's a series of bass notes that are changing on top of that chord. But I'm trying to find a way to arrange this for a guitar. So we're going to break that a little bit and play chords with a couple of kind of an exception here. So the first is going to be an A sus2, and then there's going to be a quick change where there's an F sharp goes in the bass, right? Right there, and then it goes to a right. So there you have that's a D5 chord, but I'm playing the A in the bass, so it's a D5 over A. And then on the record, it sounds like what he's doing is playing a E over the A sus2, but I think an E5 or just an E. Now I say an E5 works really well there. All right, so you go. That part where he says, I don't know, right there's a weird change there, okay? This is some real Steely Dan shit here. We're changing keys to C in the verse. So to get to C from A, what he does is he uses a F chord. It's an F7 chord, really. So the F7. Okay, but what he's doing is he's playing an F triad, and on top of that F triad is a G. So it's like I guess it's a fourth inversion. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I guess you would call it a third inversion. It's a third inversion F7 chord where the 7 is in the bass. So that's a little tough to do. So you have to make the triad like this and then use your spare ring finger to get that. It's a hard chord to make, right? And then after that, he goes to a G chord, but it's a G7. So what he does there is he does a third inversion G7 chord and puts the F in the bass. So instead of making a G chord, just put your index finger right here, mute the B string, and you've got a G over F. So really the chords are, but that sounds like shit, right? So it's like a, that's really his way of doing it. But it sounds a lot cooler. Very, very, very Steely Dan, man. Super Steely Dan. Michael McDonald sings on this song, right? Who's done a lot of work with, he did work with Steely Dan, right? Yeah, he was on a bunch. I think he was on a bunch of Steely Dan records. So that's your first fun moment of this song, and there's a lot more to come, okay? So that's going to take a lot of fucking practice, trust me, because I've been working on this song for a long week or so since I've been working on this song. So out of that G over F, we switch now to C, all right? So let's just listen back through some of the verse here. That's not the verse, hold on. All right, here we go. All right, so notice what he does. He says, he throws the D and then, Okay, so you play 3 chords. Okay, so instead of going to the E, you go to the F over G, G over F. Now we're in C. Now listen, let's play some of this. Here we go. All right, that ending of that chorus or verse has got one of the wackiest chord sequences I've seen in any Nik Kershaw song. Again, it's very, very, very Steely Dan and very difficult to perform correctly. This is not a guitar song. This is a keyboard bass, multiple keyboards bass with guitar. You know, guitar is not the primary driver of the harmony here. So out of that, that part there, we land on a C sus2, and then we immediately go to a C sus2 over A. So what we're doing is we're a minor third up from where we started. A over F sharp, D to E. Okay, we're just a minor third up. So C sus2, C sus2 over A. Okay. Get a little bit of glare, I think, here from the lights in the TV. And then we go to an F sus2 to a G. So, maybe I can ask for something. All right, C sus2 over A, F sus2. Now you can leave the low F out if you want. Just play like that, or if you use your thumb, you can get it in there. All right, F sus2. You don't want the high E in that chord, by the way. Okay. Okay. You just want to mute that high E, which is good because it's easier to play that way. And then a G. On the record, I think there's either there's like an add 9 or a sus2. I think it might be a sus2, which would just be adding that A note there. In the solo, there's a sus2 chord, so I would just play that as a straight G without a third, okay? So again, C sus2, or G, god damn it, C sus2 over A, F sus2 to the G. Then repeat, C sus with the A bass, the place she calls her home. That part, out of nowhere, we get the same change. So this first time around it was what? G or F over G to G over F. This time we get E over D to D over E. Okay, so how are those chords done? On the screen also. But you take a D power chord, so you have a triad right here, right? And you add that E bass. You play those 4 notes. That's your D over E. Your E over D is, here's your E chord here in this position, right? So you have a triad hiding right in there, an E triad. Excuse me, I have to cough. An E triad right there. So if you rearrange the fingering and finger it with all but your middle finger, and then add that on the D note there. So you get the place she calls is where the vocal is there, okay? So that's really wild. Let's listen to that again. Right here. Right, those 2 chords right there. Listen. Okay? Place she calls her home. So on home, we go to an A. You could play a full A if you want. I think what's happening in the song is that voicing there. So you have an open A note, muted 6th string, and it's really emphasizing the upper part of the chord. Okay. So you have, and then you go to an A7 with a G bass. Or you could do this voicing here. Now that actually sounds a little better, right? But you can't get the G. It's hard to get that G to make that A7. You can do it. And then you go to an a G flat sus4, which is really like that chord, where you're making the sus4, so you have all those notes on that 4th fret barred. But they're, again, just emphasizing the upper part of the chord, so you can just do it by muting those top 2 strings and playing the top part. So there's a top part of a G flat chord. Just add that note there, make it a sus4, right? The last chord is a fucking humdinger, man. The last chord is a D flat add 9 with an F bass. So the bass is landing on an F, but the D flat add 9 is done with a particular inversion. It's done with the D flat on, the D flat is not in the chord because it's being replaced by the F. So a D flat add 9 would be D flat, let me think here, D flat, A flat, E flat. Right, those would be the notes in there. And then the third also, which would be an F, right? So this is almost like a first inversion D flat chord without the root is basically what it is, okay? So there's a couple of different ways you can play this, but the way that I would suggest you do it is like this. You bar across the 1st fret here, and then you make that E flat note right there. That's the add 9. Okay? So now I have a triad here, and that triad is a G sharp, or rather an A flat, to the E flat, and then on the top I have the F. Okay? So all that's missing is the root to give me the full D flat add 9 chord. But we're going to leave the root out and just add right there the F, and you get this chord. Okay, now this is a keyboard chord. The guitar is not playing this chord, so it doesn't sound good when you strum it. So those last 4 chords coming out of that verse go bum, 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 or hard fucking chord, man. Alright? The chord shapes are all on the screen. Now when you play that part, what I do is I just palm my pick, or finger it, put it in the crook of my finger here, like George Lynch does, and just play them as pop, 4 pull notes at a time. Now listen to these chords. This took me so long to figure out. You have no idea. Fingers this time. Oops. Right? It's really fucking hard. Fucking crazy. Now there's another way you can do this also. And that is you could play the A here. And then have your, your A7 over G, however you want to do it. And then you can play the G flat sus4 here. That sounds really good. And then have your D flat add 9 over F right here. So, bum, bum, bum. Where is it here? Try that again. Bum, bum, bum. There you go. Alright? It really fucking sucks. Okay, there's no good way to show you how to do this, and you have to practice the shit out of it to get it right. Alright. Whichever way you want to do that A7, then there's your... Right? I think it sounds better there. And then that last chord or you can do it here. Right? Whichever way you want to do it. All the voicings are for you in the text file. So I told you this song was going to be a motherfucker, and it really is. This is probably the worst Nik song, the hardest Nik song I've ever tried to learn. So what happens out of that is we end back on a G flat. So the whole thing would go. So, can sit here and belabor a point. That's how you do the chords. Everything's in the text file. Good luck, have fun, and yeah, let me know how you get along with that. So now this is already a super long video, and we're not even at the chorus yet. So let's listen to that. So the chorus is very similar to the intro. So the first time through on the chorus, we go. Right, so we're back in D flat on the 5 chord. A flat, B flat minor, A flat, D flat, G flat, up to E flat minor. Second time, A flat, B flat minor, A flat, D flat, and then end it, again optional add 9, on the G flat. And then we go back to the verse, which is exactly the same, guys, as the very first verse. I don't want to repeat the verse again, okay, because this video is already way too long. I'm already sick and tired of my voice. So we just go back to A, go through the C, go through all the same wacky chords we did before. But there is something a little different at the very end of the second chorus, okay? So we're at the second verse here. Okay. Now we're in the second half of the verse. Okay. Now let's listen to the second chorus, okay? Listen to the very end of this. G flat. Ready? A flat. Listen. Now, how's that for a chord? All right. So we have a funky chord at the end here. Now, what this is, it's a B sus2 chord with a D bass, but the voicing is really weird, okay? This took me a fucking long time to figure out. I am not musically trained. I have no ear, guys. I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. So a B sus2 chord in its easiest form sits right there, okay? Now up here, there's another form of a sus2 chord that's all over the neck, right? It's right here. Like here's an E sus2, right? The sus2 is this note here, right? In E, that's an F sharp, right? F sharp is the second note. There's no third in this chord, right? It's an E5 chord with a sus2, right? It's a ninth or a 2 right on top. So bringing it up here to B, okay? There's your B sus2 chord. So there's your sus2, there's your B, and there's your 5, right? F sharp. So in this case, the B sus2 chord, the note B is right in the middle of the chord here. F sharp, B, sus2, C sharp, right there, all right? Now, you have to keep your middle finger free here so you can bring it up onto this D right here. That is such a fucking weird chord. I do not know what goes on inside that man's head. Okay. Now the D is cool because it brings us to G in the bridge, so it's a dominant move, right? It's from the 5 to the 1, D being the 5 of G. So this chord is going to take you some practice, okay? So at the very end of that last chorus, he goes through it twice, but then he goes, who are you talking to? And then bring it up here to the D. Now, there's a lot of harmonies on there. You can really hear Michael McDonald on that part. All right. So that's a B sus2 over D. All right, now we're in the bridge. So let's scoot back a little bit. And yeah, it's a little bit more fun coming here in the bridge, so let's listen to that. All right, here we go. All right, so there's some real interesting stuff in this bridge, and this is like so 80s sounding. It's like the most 80s sounding of all his music. It's crazy. So the last chord then of that second chorus was that B sus2 over D. All right, so that D gives us a 1-5 to G. And there are no more dimes to spend. And then the second chord is an A over G. So third chord is an A with a B bass. And then so there we have that same move that he pulled earlier with the F over G to a G over F, and then subsequently the D over E to the E over D. So this time we're getting a D over C to a C over D. All right, so again, the first three chords are G, A over G, A over B, all right, and then we come up here and we make that D triad right there. But instead of adding the E here, what we're going to do is we're going to add the C right there. Okay, so you have that triad, you add the C, and mute the A string. And then to get to the C over D, there's your C major chord. We're going to take that triad right there, 5-5-5, right on the D, G, and B strings, and we're just going to add the note D on top of that. So you have a 4-note chord, right? Takes us to the solo. So those last 4 chords then, okay, are pretty wacky. All right, so just so we're clear, the beginning of the bridge, A over G, A over B, D over C to C over D, okay? Now, the second time around on that bridge, we have the same 2 chords at the beginning, G, A over G, but then we have the da, da, ba, ba. So let's just listen to that for reference and I'll show you the chords. Okay, these 4 chords did my head in. It turns out the first one is really simple. It's just a C. So I'm playing a C bar chord, but just the top 4 notes. And I would suggest you play these like keyboard chords, so we pop them all together. All right. The second chord is an A sus4. Call me. I'm getting a little sick. My daughter's sick. I think she's throwing it my way. Call me. Right. Bum, bum. So an A sus4. If you take the top of an A power chord or A bar chord, excuse me. All right. And then add your pinky right there. You can take away your middle finger. You get an A sus4 chord. Fingering's on the screen. I know you guys like fingering, right? So, da, da. And then you have an F add 9. This was really hard to get the right fingering for this, the right voicing, which is here. So the way to think about this is if you take an F chord using the C shape, okay, and just use those top 3 notes and replace the fingers like this, and then add that G down on the bottom here. So you have F, A, so that's 1, 3, 5. There's your C, so there's an F triad with the 9 on the bottom there. So that's an F add 9. And the next chord is a G add 9, so you slide up 2 frets. So you have G, B, D, F major triad with an A on top, the 9th. So all together, call me, ba, ba. And then it goes into the solo, which is the second half of the verse, so we go to a C sus2. So again, like he does in the transition from the beginning of the verse to the second part of the verse, where he comes out of the A, and you get that that F over G to the G over F, and then you go to C. He's doing something very similar here, in that he's going F to G and then to C. So in this case, it just happens to be F add 9, G add 9. All right, so those 4 chords again. Da, 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 and then to the sax solo. Guys, that is one of the hardest things I've had to figure out. I am not a good musician, despite whatever you think. So I hope that came out correct. So that moves us into the sax solo, and this is a super 80s, man. So the sax solo is played over the second part of the verse. It's exactly the same as the second part of the verse. C sus2 over C sus2 over A, or 2A C sus2 over A, F sus2. In this case, he's definitely playing a G sus2, which is a G chord and an added A right there. Okay. Repeat. I think that repeats 3 times, and then it's the same thing as the verse. Then you have the D over E, E over D, A, A7 over G, G flat sus4 to the God damn it, there it is there. The D flat add 9 over F, which really is a D flat add 9 with no D flat in it. So it's actually some kind of other mongrel chord, but there might be a D flat hiding in there. I'm not guaranteeing you these voicings are right. Okay, this shit is really hard, and I'm not a musician. Like I know how to play music, but man, this is at a different level. So yeah, so when we come out of the sax solo, we just go back into the chorus. Now, and there is something about the chorus, the outro chorus, we need to talk about. So let's just play through this. All right, now listen, this time. Reverses it. So what he does there is he goes A flat, B flat minor, A flat, D flat, G flat, up to E flat as we've been doing. But the second time, E flat, then to G flat, okay? Now listen to what happens next. Let's scoot back a little bit. stop it there. So you see, I don't know if you saw what happened. So he goes A flat, B flat minor, but then he does a first inversion, C over A flat. Little bastard. You can hear how it goes higher. Listen. Listen to the vocal melody. Listen. You hear it? Who goes up higher? It goes up higher. Now listen. Right? A little fucking bastard, right?
You fucking sneaky bastard.
So, other than that, it's pretty much the same. The song ends on a G flat. Listen. Hear that 9 in there? All right. So, guys, one hell of a song. I don't even know if I got it right. I'm sure that I could probably improve it somehow, but I put a fucking lot of work into this. It was a real pleasure to dig into this one. I like a challenge, and this one was certainly a challenge. So, that said, have fun, and hope you enjoyed it.